I am a software engineer from Seattle. 5 years ago, I met Jessica at a tech conference in San Francisco. She was brilliant, ambitious, and beautiful. Our connection was instant. Within months, we were flying between cities every weekend. After she moved to Seattle, we got married in a small ceremony on the Washington coast. I thought we would build our lives together forever. I never expected her to drag me to court over something so petty. Before I tell you how my ex-wife lost everything trying to sue me, let me know where you are watching from. And hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever dealt with someone who pushed you too far. The first time I saw Jessica was across a crowded conference hall in San Francisco. It was September 2019, and we were both attending the annual Tech Forward conference. I was representing my company, a mid-sized software development firm from Seattle, while she was there for her employer, one of our competitors in the financial software space. During a panel discussion on blockchain integration, she asked a question that cut through all the corporate jargon and got straight to the heart of the security concerns. I was impressed by her intellect and directness. Later that evening, we ended up at the same networking mixer. She was standing alone by the bar, scrolling through her phone with a look of mild annoyance. I gathered my courage and approached her, complimenting her question from earlier. Jessica looked up, studied me for a moment, then smiled. "Finally, someone who speaks actual English instead of buzzword bingo," she said. We talked for hours that night, long after most attendees had left. Jessica had this magnetic energy about her. She was tall, with dark hair that fell just past her shoulders, and she had these intense brown eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. Her mind worked at incredible speed. She could process complex technical concepts and find the flaws in an argument before most people had even finished articulating their thoughts. I was captivated. We exchanged numbers, and what started as occasional text messages about industry news quickly evolved into daily conversations about everything from our favorite programming languages to our childhood dreams. 2 weeks after the conference, I flew back to San Francisco for our first official date. Our relationship progressed rapidly. Every other weekend, one of us would board a plane, me flying south or her coming north. The 600 miles between Seattle and San Francisco became a mere inconvenience rather than an obstacle. During these visits, we discovered our shared interests extended beyond technology. We both loved hiking through mountains, spending rainy Sundays coding side projects, and dreaming about launching our own companies someday. Jessica had a 5-year plan for her career that was impressively detailed. She wanted to be a chief technology officer by 35, preferably at a company she helped build. I admired her clarity of purpose and drive. My own career goals were more fluid. I enjoyed my work but was more passionate about the problems I solved than the title on my business card. After 6 months of long-distance dating, Jessica received a job offer from a Seattle tech firm that offered her a substantial raise and more strategic role. Within weeks, she had packed her San Francisco apartment and moved into my place in the Fremont neighborhood of Seattle. I was elated. The woman I loved was now sharing my space, my city, my daily life. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs that emerged soon after she moved in. They started small, almost imperceptible changes in our dynamic. Jessica began questioning who I was texting whenever my phone buzzed. If I mentioned grabbing lunch with my coworker Sarah, Jessica would ask detailed questions about our conversation and relationship. "You seem to spend a lot of time with her," Jessica remarked once, after I mentioned Sarah had helped me debug a particularly tricky code issue. "She is on my team," I explained. "We work on the same projects." Jessica nodded but added, "Just be careful. Women in tech often try to use men to advance their careers." At the time, I dismissed it as her being protective, maybe even a little insecure in the new city. I should have recognized it as the first sign of her controlling nature. The patterns grew more concerning over time. Jessica began checking my phone when I was in the shower. She would casually ask to use it to look something up, then scroll through my messages and emails. She established a shared bank account and would question purchases I made, even small ones like a coffee or book. $20. At Barnes & Noble. "What did you buy?" "That you could not get for free at the library," she would ask. despite the fact that we both earned good salaries and were financially comfortable. My friends started to notice the changes in me. My college buddy Alan pointed it out during one of our increasingly rare hangouts. "You check your watch every 15 minutes, man, and you have barely touched your beer. What is going on?" I had promised Jessica I would be home by 9, and she had texted twice already, asking where I was. Alan shook his head when I explained. "That is not normal, Cliff. Hannah never monitors me like that." I defended Jessica, saying she was just adjusting to the new city and did not know many people yet, but deep down I recognized something was off. Still, I loved her, and when she suggested we get married just before our 1-year anniversary, I said yes without hesitation. We had a small wedding ceremony in Washington State with just 50 guests, mostly my friends and family since Jessica had few close connections. The ceremony was at a lodge overlooking the Puget Sound, and despite my concerns about her increasingly controlling behavior, seeing her walk down the aisle made my heart soar. Her vows were beautiful, promising to support my dreams as I supported hers. I believed every word. For our honeymoon, we spent 2 weeks in Hawaii, splitting time between Maui and Kauai. The first few days were perfect. Hiking volcanic trails, snorkeling in crystal waters, watching sunsets from our balcony. Then came the incident that should have been my final warning. During dinner at our hotel restaurant, our waitress was a friendly local woman who recognized me from a conversation we had had in the elevator earlier. She stopped by our table, frequently making recommendations and sharing stories about growing up on the island. After she left with our dessert order, Jessica's expression darkened. "Why did you not tell me you already knew her?" she demanded. I explained our brief elevator chat, but Jessica was unconvinced. "She was flirting with you right in front of me, and you encouraged it." The accusation was so absurd that I laughed, which only infuriated Jessica more. She stood up and walked out, leaving me to apologize to the waitress and pay the bill. Back in our room, Jessica was icy, refusing to speak to me for the rest of the night. The next morning she apologized, tearfully blaming her reaction on job stress and wedding exhaustion. I forgave her, wanting to salvage our honeymoon. But something had shifted irrevocably between us. Upon returning to Seattle as husband and wife, our dynamics continued to evolve, but not for the better. Jessica's career at her new company took off rapidly. Within 6 months of our wedding, she received a promotion to senior product manager. I was genuinely proud of her accomplishments and did everything I could to support her, taking on more household responsibilities when she worked late, acting as a sounding board for her ideas, even helping her prepare presentations. Yet as her professional star rose, her criticism of my career choices intensified. "You could be leading your own team by now if you were more aggressive in meetings," she would say. Or, "That startup your friend launched could have been your idea if you would take more risks." The fact that I enjoyed my job and found fulfillment in my work, without craving advancement, seemed incomprehensible to her. Financial tensions emerged as her salary eventually surpassed mine. What should have been a shared success for our household became a power imbalance she wielded like a weapon. I paid for the new furniture she would remind me during disagreements, though I contributed equally to our household expenses. "Maybe I should make the decisions, since I am the primary earner," now she suggested once when we disagreed about vacation plans. Each comment chipped away at the foundation of our relationship, creating fractures that would eventually break us apart. The breaking point in our marriage came 18 months after our wedding. Jessica's company had just acquired a smaller startup, and her team was expanding rapidly. One evening, she returned home with an unexpected proposition. "They are creating a new development team for the integration," she announced while we were preparing dinner. "I recommended you for the lead position." I was stirring pasta sauce and nearly dropped the spoon. What I told my director you would be perfect to head the new team," she continued, seemingly oblivious to my shock. "You start next month. The offer letter is being prepared." I turned off the stove and faced her. "Jessica, I cannot just leave my job. I have projects I am committed to, a team I lead." "This is a step up," she interrupted. "Better title, better pay, better future. Why would you not take it?" because you made this decision without even consulting me." I replied, struggling to keep my voice calm. "That is not how partnerships work." Her expression hardened. "I was trying to help your career since you will not help yourself." The argument escalated quickly. Jessica accused me of being ungrateful, lacking ambition, and embarrassing her professionally. When I stood firm in my refusal, her words became weapons designed to wound. "This is why you will always be mediocre," she said coldly. "I am moving forward while you are holding me back." That night, unable to sleep beside her, I used her tablet to check some work emails since my laptop was charging in the other room. A notification appeared. A message from someone named Derek. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." Our usual spot, I should not have opened it, but suspicion and hurt overrode my better judgment. The message thread revealed an ongoing emotional affair with her coworker. While there was no explicit evidence of physical infidelity, the intimate nature of their conversations was undeniable. The confrontation that followed was ugly. Jessica did not deny the emotional affair, but somehow twisted it to be my fault. "If you were more supportive of my career, I would not need to seek understanding elsewhere," she claimed. 2 days later, I moved into my friend Alan's spare bedroom. We attempted marriage counseling for 3 sessions, but Jessica refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Instead, she presented a list of ways I needed to change. Quit my job. Be more supportive of her career. Stop spending time with friends she disapproved of. The counselor gently suggested that both parties needed to compromise in a healthy relationship. Jessica never returned for a 4th session. After 6 weeks of separation, with no progress toward reconciliation, I made the painful decision to file for divorce. I hoped we could handle it amicably, dividing our relatively uncomplicated assets without acrimony. Initially, Jessica seemed to agree, suggesting we use a mediator rather than individual attorneys to save money and maintain civility. That civility lasted exactly 2 mediation sessions. During our 3rd meeting, Jessica arrived with an attorney whose reputation for aggressive tactics preceded him. Their opening position shocked me. Jessica wanted alimony despite earning considerably more than I did, half of my retirement savings and our entire condo, which I had purchased before we met, though she had contributed to mortgage payments during our marriage. "On what grounds?" I asked incredulously. Her attorney, a sharp-featured man named Raymond Dixon, smiled thinly. "Mrs. Marshall sacrificed significant career advancement opportunities to relocate to Seattle for your benefit." The claim was so blatantly false that I nearly laughed. Jessica had moved for a better job and higher salary. Nothing about the move had benefited me exclusively, or required sacrifice on her part. But there was another element to their demands that truly blindsided me. Jessica was claiming partial ownership of my side project, a software startup I had been building nights and weekends for nearly 2 years. This project had been my passion since before I met Jessica. It was a specialized security software for financial institutions that automatically detected unusual patterns and potential fraud. I had been coding it mostly between 11 at night and 2 in the morning hours when Jessica was already asleep. She had shown zero interest in it, frequently calling it my hobby, and suggesting it was taking time away from supporting her career. Yet now, according to her attorney, she had made significant contributions to the intellectual development of the product and deserved 50% ownership. What had changed? 3 weeks before our separation, I had received interest from 2 venture capital firms after demonstrating the software at a small industry showcase. Suddenly, my waste of time had potential value, and Jessica wanted her share. The divorce proceedings stretched from weeks into months, draining my savings and emotional reserves. Meanwhile, Jessica launched what can only be described as a harassment campaign. She posted vague but damaging statements on social media, suggesting I had been unfaithful, a complete fabrication. She contacted mutual friends with stories about my supposed emotional abuse and manipulation. Most painfully, she reached out to potential investors in my startup, warning them about the disputed ownership of the intellectual property. "You should conduct proper due diligence before investing in Clifford Marshall's venture," she wrote in one email. I was eventually forwarded by a confused investor. The ownership of the core technology is currently under legal dispute. I tried to maintain dignity throughout, refusing to engage in public mudslinging or retaliation. My attorney advised staying quiet and documenting everything. I followed his advice, creating folders of screenshots, saved emails, and recorded phone calls, Washington being a one-party consent state for recordings. Throughout this ordeal, I focused on two things: finalizing the divorce as quickly as possible and protecting my startup. The latter became increasingly important as investor interest continued to grow despite Jessica's interference. The certified letter arrived at my new apartment on a rainy Tuesday morning. I recognized the law firm name on the return address: Dixon, Alvarez and Warner. With a sense of dread, I opened it to find a formal lawsuit notification. Jessica was suing me for 50% ownership of my startup, claiming she had contributed substantially to its intellectual property during our marriage. The document outlined her alleged contributions in vague terms: strategic guidance, conceptual frameworks, and technical suggestions that formed the foundation of the product's unique features. She was also claiming $10,000 in emotional damages due to my deliberate attempts to undervalue her contributions and exclude her from rightful ownership. Panic gripped me as I read through the legal jargon. While I knew her claims were baseless, proving that in court would be challenging and expensive. The startup was gaining traction with serious investor interest and promising early customer feedback. A protracted legal battle could derail everything. I immediately called Martin Weber, the intellectual property attorney who had been advising me on the divorce aspects related to my company. His secretary put me through right away, sensing my urgency. "They have actually filed," I said, skipping pleasantries. "Jessica is suing for half my company." Martin's response was measured. "Email me the documents right away. Do not respond to anything. Do not contact Jessica or her attorney. We will meet tomorrow morning." The next day, in Martin's downtown office with its sweeping views of Elliott Bay, we reviewed the lawsuit line by line. Martin's paralegal brought coffee and took meticulous notes as we spoke. "Her claims of contribution are incredibly vague," Martin noted, tapping the document with his pen. "No specific features, no documented design input, no code contributions. This is good for us." "Can we get it dismissed?" I asked hopefully. Martin leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Not easily. Washington is a community property state, and work done during marriage can be considered joint property, regardless of who actually did the work. We would need to prove you conceived and substantially developed the product before marriage with minimal or no development during the marriage." My heart sank. While I had started the project before meeting Jessica, the vast majority of the development had occurred during our 3-year relationship. "What are our options?" Martin spread his hands on the polished surface of the conference table. "We fight it, which will be expensive and time-consuming. We settle, which means giving her something. Or," he paused, a slight smile forming, "we give her exactly what she is asking for." I stared at him in confusion. "You want me to just hand over half my company? Everything I have worked for?" "Not exactly," he replied. "I have a different strategy in mind. Let me explain how corporate structure and liability work in a situation like this." Over the next hour, Martin outlined a plan that seemed both brilliant and terrifying. The approach hinged on a crucial fact: Jessica did not understand the actual structure of my business or its current financial status. Her lawsuit specifically named the original LLC I had created, not knowing I had established a new corporate entity 2 months after our separation. "You said yourself, she never showed interest in the details of your business," Martin reminded me. "Did she know about the company restructuring?" "No," I confirmed. "It happened after she moved out, and we were only communicating through attorneys by then." "Perfect," Martin said. "Here is what we do." The plan was deceptively simple. We would research the exact financial status of the original LLC document, all outstanding debts and potential liabilities, and prepare a comprehensive report. Then, rather than fighting her claim, We would appear to concede, agreeing to grant her 50% ownership of the original company, exactly as requested in her lawsuit. What Jessica did not know was that the original LLC now existed primarily as a shell company, carrying approximately $250,000 in development debt and potential legal liabilities from early stage primarily. Agreements. The valuable intellectual property, recent code developments, and investor relationships had all been legally transferred to the new corporation. "Is this ethical?" I asked hesitantly. Martin's expression grew serious. She filed a lawsuit demanding 50% of a specific company. We are giving her exactly what she asked for. The fact that she did not do proper due diligence before filing is not your problem. This is not about revenge, Clifford. This is about protecting what is legitimately yours from someone trying to claim it without contribution. After considerable thought, I agreed to the strategy. Over the next 2 weeks, we meticulously prepared our case and response to the lawsuit. Martin advised me to maintain a poker face during all proceedings and to answer questions factually, but minimally. The preliminary hearing arrived. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined from television shows, with wood paneling that needed refinishing and uncomfortable wooden benches. Jessica sat on the opposite side with her attorney wearing a conservative navy dress that I had never seen before. She looked confident occasionally, whispering to Raymond Dixon and glancing at me with what appeared to be pity. As the proceedings began, Jessica's attorney presented her case, first painting her as an integral contributor to the startup's concept and development. He described late-night brainstorming sessions that had never occurred, and technical suggestions she had supposedly made that had shaped the core functionality. I maintained my composure as instructed, though hearing these fabrications tested my resolve. When Jessica took the stand, she spoke with practiced emotion about feeling betrayed, that I had taken our idea and excluded her. Her performance was convincing. If I had not lived the reality, I might have believed her myself. "Can you describe specific code or features you contributed?" Martin asked during cross-examination. Jessica faltered slightly. "I am not a developer, so I did not write code. My contributions were conceptual and strategic." "Can you name any of these conceptual contributions?" I suggested. "The interface should be user-friendly for financial professionals," she offered. "Do you have any documentation of these suggestions?" "Emails, notes, recorded meetings. We were married," she replied, her confidence wavering. "We did not document casual conversations about his work." Martin nodded thoughtfully. "No further questions, Your Honor. When my turn came to testify, I stuck to verifiable facts. Yes, I had started the company before meeting Jessica. Yes, I had worked on it throughout our marriage. No, Jessica had never written code, attended developer meetings, or contributed documented ideas. I presented GitHub commits, showing thousands of code additions, all from my account, none from hers. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, seemed increasingly skeptical of Jessica's claims. She asked pointed questions about the lack of documented contribution and Jessica's sudden interest in a project she had previously dismissed. Then came the turning point. Jessica's attorney, clearly sensing the judge's skepticism, changed tactics. Instead of trying to prove Jessica's contribution, he focused on the potential value of the company, citing the recent investor interest. "Your Honor, regardless of documentation, Mrs. Marshall was his wife during the critical development period of what could become a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Washington law entitles her to an equitable share of marital assets, including this business venture." He turned toward me, his expression triumphant. "We are simply asking for immediate recognition of Mrs. Marshall's 50% ownership of the company known as Secure Track LLC, as is her right under state law." Martin and I exchanged a glance. They had walked directly into our trap. "Your Honor," Martin said, rising slowly, "my client has considered Mrs. Marshall's request carefully. In the interest of resolving this matter efficiently, he is willing to agree to her demand for 50% ownership of Secure Track LLC, as specifically named in the lawsuit." Jessica's face lit up with surprise and satisfaction. Her attorney looked equally stunned by our capitulation, but quickly recovered. "We appreciate Mr. Marshall finally acknowledging my client's rightful claim," Raymond said. "We accept his concession and ask that the transfer of ownership be executed immediately." The judge looked suspiciously between the parties. "Mr. Weber, your client is agreeing to the 50% ownership demand without further contest." "Yes, Your Honor," Martin confirmed. "However, as part of this agreement, we must ensure Mrs. Marshall understands her responsibilities as a 50% owner. We have prepared documentation of the company's current financial status, outstanding debts, and potential liabilities that Mrs. Marshall will be assuming along with her ownership stake." Martin approached the bench with a thick folder. "The company currently carries $250,000 in development debt, has outstanding obligations to early development partners that could result in litigation, and faces potential patent challenges that will require defensive legal action. As 50% owner, Mrs. Marshall will be legally responsible for 50% of these debts and liabilities." Jessica's triumphant expression crumbled as she realized the implications. She whispered urgently to her attorney, who looked increasingly uncomfortable as he skimmed the financial documents. "Your Honor," Raymond began, "this appears to be an attempt to saddle my client with debt from mismanagement. The documentation clearly shows all debts were incurred for legitimate business development." Martin interrupted, pointing to specific pages. "Development contracts, server costs, licensing fees, all standard expenses for a software startup. If Mrs. Marshall believes she deserves 50% ownership, she must accept 50% of the responsibilities." The judge reviewed the documents carefully before addressing Jessica directly. "Mrs. Marshall, do you understand that as an owner you would be responsible for your portion of any company debts or legal obligations?" Jessica looked panicked. I thought the company had value. He has been talking to investors. The lawsuit specifically names Secure Track LLC," the judge noted. "The documentation shows this entity carries significant debt, which is not unusual for a startup. Did you perform due diligence before filing this lawsuit?" "We would like to request a continuance to review these financial claims," Raymond interjected desperately. "The financial records have been available during discovery," Martin countered. "They chose not to request them. Furthermore, my client has already agreed to their demand. They cannot now withdraw simply because they do not like the financial implications of ownership." After further heated discussion, the judge made her ruling. "Based on the defendant's acceptance of the plaintiff's demand and the clear documentation of the company's financial status, I am granting Mrs. Marshall's request for 50% ownership of Secure Track LLC, with all associated rights, responsibilities, and liabilities. The agreement will be executed within 30 days. Jessica sat motionless, the color drained from her face as she realized what had just happened. Her attorney was already gathering papers, avoiding her gaze. I maintained my neutral expression, but inside a weight had lifted. Justice had been served through Jessica's own greed and carelessness. The moment the courtroom doors closed behind us, Martin turned to me with a subtle smile. "Congratulations. You just got rid of $250,000 in debt and protected your actual business." I felt oddly conflicted. I never wanted to harm her financially. I just wanted what was rightfully mine. "She tried to take what was not hers," Martin reminded me. "The consequences are of her own making." Jessica's reaction in the aftermath was predictable. First came rage, a barrage of furious text messages and emails accusing me of trickery and fraud. Her attorney advised her to cease contact when I forwarded everything to Martin. Then came desperate negotiation, offers to drop all claims in exchange for me taking back full ownership and the associated debt. Finally, she attempted to have the agreement nullified, claiming she had been misled about the company's status. The judge was unsympathetic. The plaintiff was represented by competent counsel and had ample opportunity to conduct due diligence. The court cannot protect parties from the consequences of their own strategic decisions. The reality of Jessica's situation soon became apparent. The debt she now partially owned was very real. The original LLC had legitimately borrowed money for development, signed contracts with penalty clauses, and faced potential intellectual property challenges. Within 3 months, creditors began contacting her directly for payment of her share of the obligations. Jessica's financial situation deteriorated rapidly. Required to pay approximately $125,000 of company debt, her credit score plummeted. She was forced to sell her luxury car and designer wardrobe. 6 months after the court ruling, I learned through a mutual acquaintance that she had filed for bankruptcy and moved back to San Francisco to live with her parents. Her professional reputation suffered as well. The technology community in Seattle is surprisingly small, and word spread about her attempted intellectual property grab and subsequent financial collapse. Job offers dried up and former colleagues distanced themselves. I took no pleasure in her downfall despite the justice of it. There had been a time when I truly loved her, and seeing someone you once cared for self-destruct is never satisfying. Meanwhile, my actual business, now operating under the name Secure Defend Incorporated, flourished. The restructuring that had occurred 3 months before Jessica's lawsuit had been completely legal and transparent. All valuable intellectual property code repositories and potential investor relationships had been transferred to the new entity. The timing had been fortunate rather than planned. I had restructured on my attorney's advice to better position the company for investment, not in anticipation of Jessica's lawsuit. With the legal distractions behind me, I secured Series A funding of $2 million. The investment allowed me to hire a small team of developers and establish proper office space. Our first enterprise client signed on 4 months later, and others followed quickly. My personal recovery took longer than my professional renaissance. The betrayal and months of legal battles left emotional scars that needed healing. I began seeing a therapist who specialized in recovery from toxic relationships. Dr. Levinson helped me recognize the patterns of control and emotional manipulation that had characterized my marriage to Jessica. "You were not responsible for her behavior," she reminded me. In one particularly difficult session, setting boundaries is not the same as causing harm. I also worked on rebuilding friendships that had withered under Jessica's influence. Alan and his wife Hannah welcomed me back into their lives without hesitation. Other friends required more time and explanation, but most relationships eventually healed. Dating again felt daunting, but after a year I cautiously rejoined the world of romantic possibilities. I approached relationships with new awareness, watching carefully for red flags I had previously ignored. When I eventually met Madeline, a pediatric nurse, with a wicked sense of humor and genuine kindness, I was better equipped to recognize and appreciate a healthy connection. 3 years after the lawsuit, Secure Defend Incorporated had grown to a team of 28 employees with offices in Seattle and Boston. Our security software was being used by 15 financial institutions, and we were preparing to expand into the healthcare sector. The shell company that Jessica partially owned had been formally dissolved after all debts were settled primarily through her bankruptcy proceedings. I was attending a technology conference in Chicago, ironically similar to the one where I had first met Jessica, when our paths crossed again. She was standing at a vendor booth, now representing a mid-sized payment processing company. She looked different. Her designer clothes replaced by a simple blazer, and Slack's her confident posture somewhat diminished. Our eyes met across the crowded exhibition hall. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she nodded slightly in acknowledgement. I returned the gesture and continued on my way. No words were necessary. The chapter was closed. That brief encounter provided unexpected closure. Jessica had clearly recovered enough to find employment in the industry again. Despite everything I hoped, she had found some measure of peace and learned from our mutual disaster. Looking back at the entire experience, from whirlwind romance to bitter courtroom battle, I realized that forgiveness had become possible, not for Jessica's benefit but for my own. Carrying anger and resentment would only continue to harm me, not her. The lessons I learned were invaluable. Trust should be earned gradually, not given immediately. Red flags should never be ignored, no matter how much you want to see only the good in someone. Most importantly, maintaining your boundaries is not selfish, It is essential for healthy relationships. Have you ever had someone push you too far, only to have it backfire on them? I would love to read your stories in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that standing up for yourself is not just okay, sometimes it is necessary. Thank you for listening, and remember, the best revenge is not getting even, it is living well.